Europe, as well as responsible for our Microsoft Venture Accelerator program. And we have a great panel of friends, and I think we missed some that actually took off. But no, I think John is gone. I think John is left, right? Had to catch a flight. So maybe we'll start by doing a very, very quick introduction of the people here. So go ahead, Maurizio.
Good morning. My name is Maurizio Rossi. I'm co-founder of Age Farm Ventures, which is an integrated platform for startup business. We integrate accelerator, venture firm, and a hub for late stage startup, and a educational program for entrepreneurship.
Hey everyone, this is Shai Goldman. I'm with a firm called 500 Startups. We're a VC fund and accelerator headquartered in Mountain View, California. We've been around for about 3 years now, have had 6 accelerator classes during that time. I'm based in New York. I cover the East Coast and Israel for the firm.
Abdulmalek Al-Jabber. I'm the co-founder of Arab Noor and MENA Apps, a pan-Arab initiative for accelerators, seed funding, angel network, and mentor network. We are currently working in 4 countries, including Jordan, Palestine, Morocco, and Tunisia.
Good afternoon. My name is Vasily Belov. I'm Senior Vice President of Skolkovo Foundation. The Skolkovo Foundation is a non-profit project by Russian government to support innovations, and we are 3 years old, and now more than 1,000 startups are residents of the project.
Good evening. My name is Yossi Smoler. I am the Technological Incubators Program Director in the Chief Scientist Office, Ministry of Economy. We have around 21 incubators all over the country, and I will talk about it later.
Great. So it seems like every other day there's a new accelerator popping up, right? Accelerators, incubators, hubs, shared working spaces. It seems a bit crazy. And people are asking, does it make sense? Does it make sense for so many new organizations that are trying to help startups start? So I wonder, any of you thinks it makes sense for all these new organizations to pop up every day? Do you see this actually happening around the world? Shai, do you want to?
So I'm based in New York, as I mentioned. So there's 15 equity-based accelerators in New York, which is quite a bit. I think it's sort of too soon to say whether we need all these accelerators. I think the positive thing is, the cost of startups has gone down dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of interest by entrepreneurs globally to create companies. There's initiatives by various countries to start companies in their geographies. And we sort of look at accelerators as almost like an MBA program. And so there's sort of an educational component to how to start and create a startup. A lot of companies will fail at accelerators, and many accelerators will not be fruitful in terms of return on investment. But from an educational component, I think it provides a lot of value for their respective communities. So there's value, and it's probably too early to tell whether that's a positive or negative thing for the community.
Okay.
I think, Zack, also depends which country you're talking about. If you talk about the Arab world, the total number of accelerators that exist today will not exceed 15. Between Jordan and Palestine, maybe you have 10, and the rest of the Arab world, you have 5. Number of VC funds that exist, maybe 3 or 4. So it depends. I think, is this an enough number of accelerators? Definitely not. There's a need for much more incubators, accelerators, angel networks, mentorship networks, etc. So there's a big difference with the ecosystem. And I don't think it's solved by having physical space. You create accelerator, incubator, co-working space. I think the whole ecosystem that also covers the education system, the legal framework, and how easy it is to register and dissolve a company, etc. That also is a key requirement for have a successful acceleration in any country.
Right. So by the way, there the latest numbers I've looked at, there are about 1,900 incubators and accelerators in the U.S. alone today exist, which I think is a crazy number of organizations. And I know that there are a lot of people are saying that actually most of them will shut down. So we've seen, I think in the U.S., we've seen a big hype about 7, 8 years ago. and then we saw many of them closing down. And in the last couple of years, think we're seeing it across the world, that there's a hype cycle again, and I personally think that most of these accelerators are going to shut down, because I don't think that actually the accelerator model makes economical sense. Does any of you believe that the accelerator model by itself makes an economical sense? You think so? So I'll tell you why I say so. So if you look at this at an accelerator that's not a corporate accelerator, or is not funded by a later stage VC, and think you're starting an accelerator now in Tel Aviv. So you're taking, I don't know, 10 startups in, and you're putting $25,000 each, or $20,000 or $30,000 each, and you take 6, 8, 10% equity. 5-7 years from now, two of them are going to be successful if you're good, right? So you've been diluted pretty dramatically by the point that they're successful, and now you need to pay back 5-7 years of real estate, 3-4 heads, some pay mentors. I'm not sure the model makes sense.
The model makes sense if you're successful at picking the right companies, but that's sort of the big question mark is, if you can't pick the right companies, if you don't have access to the right deal flow, you're not going to have the exits. But you look at Y Combinator, they're very successful with that model. AngelPad is an accelerator in San Francisco. They just had a big exit, which basically is going to create value for them for the next 3 or 4 years. So if you're picking the right companies, yeah, but I mean, a lot of accelerators are not going to have
different programs backed by industries. An example, this is also part of our experience, because our accelerator is based in Italy, and in 8 years we started in 2005, so in the same month that Y Combinator started. And Y Combinator in Silicon Valley, he had a deal flow, and we had to invent the startup. But in the end of the day, we created our platform because of the lack of investors, and we created the venture firm. And I believe that there is still a lot to create an evolution, and the demand that there is a number of startupper, which will increase, because technologies now will go also into the wearable, into the Internet of Things. So new generation of startup will come. So even more startupper, and they have to be supported with the supply chain as to evolve. So I see a lot of work to do to get an evolution, but I see we are part of the supply chain.
Yeah, so I completely agree. So I think the whole notion of thematic accelerators, where actually corporations around the world with a certain theme, like automotive, financial, fashion.
The verticals will be very, very important for accelerator in the future.
Absolutely. And I think, Yossi, you're running a bit of a different program, right? The Incubators, a longer-term program. Can you tell us about that? Because you've lately been more thematic in the way you've picked partners, right?
Yeah, first I would like to mention that we have something like between 22, 24 incubators since 1991, and this is quite a very fixed amount, so it's not going up and down all the time. So this is quite permanent. Secondly, the incubators, it's a different model. It's you cannot compare incubators to accelerators. It's not comparing apples to apples. Incubators is basically a government response to a market failure. And the idea here is the failure is that we have a lot of entrepreneurs that having very innovative technological ideas. They're willing to establish startup companies, but they cannot raise money at this early stage because VCs are not investing in early stage. So the government takes the risk here, select just the top of them, and the top of them is something like not more than 5% out of the entrepreneurs that are really approaching every year the incubators, putting them into incubators, providing them all the necessary support. It's the infrastructure, offices, equipments, laboratories, mentoring of the staff of the incubators on a daily basis, connectivity to the outside world, helping them to raise money, etc. And the idea is that after 2 years, they should reach a milestone where they can now raise money from the private sector without the support of the government anymore. And this is how we measure success. If they succeed to do that, it means that we've done our job. And that's basically the incubators. Accelerators, it's a different story. It's much shorter time. It's 3 to 6 months. And it's, I think it's aimed more to internet or mobile type of application where in 3 or 6 months you can show something. I mean, this is really not relevant to more complicated, long development process that in 3 or 6 months can show nothing. So that's really... And my last comment is that in the IT incubators that we have today, some of them already implementing Accelerator as a pre-phase or pre-incubator phase, which looks to be quite successful.
So you touched a good point of the timing. So one of the responses that we usually get from people, they say, no way, in 3 months or 4 months, can you really make an impact on the company? It doesn't really make sense. Anyone want to talk about the timing aspect? So 2 years makes sense. Does 3 months or 4 months make sense?
I think it depends on what qualities or what parts of what aspects of the company you want to develop. In our project, we focus on 5 industries, which are very different in its sense. IT, biomedical, where you have a much longer cycles, minimum 7 years to bring something to the market if you are talking about the drug development, etc. And I think that both frameworks are really useful. It depends on the stage where the company is. We as a development institution, we support companies with the grant financing. And for us, it's a great advantage when we select the project. If there is an acceleration team nearby the project, we are much comfortable in approving government funding for that, understanding that there is a good focus on time to market. Because lots of the teams who are doing great research, they have a very strong scientific focus, but they are not focusing on being quick to the market and getting the first revenues from the sales. And this is very important. And I think that's exactly where Accelerators model can greatly contribute. In Russia, the landscape of innovation support is now developing. And there are very few effective accelerators. And I think it's a good opportunity maybe for our colleagues to think about joining the market. For example, as I said, we have more than 1,000 startups who are getting tax exemptions from our project, but there are very few accelerators, and I would say about maybe maximum 5% of these companies are working with some mentors or professional accelerators so far, but we see a big need for that in terms of the skills. The other question, which is very important, and I think the good point was made about the industry, I think it's more relevant for the incubation, where you not only bring in expertise, preparing company for sale, preparing company for presentation for the investors, reshaping, but you can affect through the strategic changes, you can affect the researchers, development of the product. And that's where you need exactly the industry knowledge and the industry expertise to be brought in.
Anyone else on the period of time, the timing?
I think, it depends on what is the vision, the strategic vision behind having accelerators or incubators. Let's leave the difference between accelerator and incubator for a second, because if you talk about the U.S., the Silicon Valley model, I think it's good for the U.S. What works for Europe is different. What works for the Arab world is different, because the challenges are different. The economic challenges and the problems are different. If you look at the Arab world, where you have more than 70% of the population below 34, where you have an unemployment in the range of 15%, and you need 100 million jobs by 2020 to keep the same level of unemployment, that is a big challenge. Now, in this case, accelerators is not a business by itself. In the US, setting up accelerators is a business. And investors are setting up accelerators, whether they die or they don't die, that's a different story. But the whole concept of accelerators, entrepreneurship, incubators in the Arab world is a way to deal with the economic challenges and the unemployment and the youth, and especially after the Arab Spring, because what happened in Egypt, what happened in Tunisia, what happens in Syria, and what's happening in other countries made every single government open their eyes about the serious problem of this unemployment and the young generation. Now, incubators and accelerators is a magical approach to deal with these issues and to open a horizon, a beautiful horizon for young entrepreneurs from these countries where before they never had this kind of opportunity. 5 years ago, if you go anywhere and you say incubator or accelerator or angel investor, people will think you are speaking Chinese. I mean, in Israel you had it 20 years ago or 25 years ago. In the US it's been there for a long time. But in the Arab world, this is just a new understanding of dealing with the economic challenges. Now, once again, I think it depends on the kind of industry. What my colleagues mentioned before, if it's an internet-based, then 6 months to 9 months might be quite enough. If you are talking about mobile gaming or social media, if you talk about life sciences, of course that's not the case. It's a different game. It's a much longer time frame.